All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Can everybody hear me? I guess they couldn't tell me that because they're on mute. Hi, folks. Thanks for being here. My name is Tamir Novotny. I'm the Executive Director of Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy. I'm here with our strategic planning lead consultant, Christi Tran, and our partner, Francis Tompkins, with my colleague, Teresa Mabry, who just joined our team a short while ago, and we're really excited to have her with us. And we're here today to talk about our strategic plan. And excuse me for one moment, because while this is going, I can't see all of you. And I want to make sure that I'm not missing a message from the team. Let me see if I can do both of these at the same time. Pardon my multitasking here. Sorry, folks, I'm not a Mac person. So thank you for your patience. While I'm getting that sorted, again, I just want to thank you all for being here. We're really excited to have you. We're here today to talk about a process that we've been hard at work on for the last 6 months, engaging many of you with the goal of building a strategy for EPIP for the next 3 to 5 years. And one thing that we're really proud of is that we're trying to do as much of the process as possible out in the open in a way that engages all of you in shaping the work. One of my pet peeves about philanthropy is the way that strategy is often developed behind closed doors. And some of you may have been in rooms like this where you get a group together, somebody makes a point, uses an interesting word, and everybody goes, yeah! And that's your strategy for the next 3 to 5 years. Can be a very frustrating way of doing things when you then have to go and work with community to try to implement the strategy. And so we're really committed to promoting distributed leadership through what we're doing. And today you're going to see some things that are not fully polished. They are raw by design, and it's our goal to refine them together. We're going to ask you questions over the course of the webinar, and we're going to ask you to either complete polls or raise questions or drop feedback in the chat box. Some of you I know, and so be ready. I might call on you and ask you to lend your perspective here or there. If for some reason we unmute the line, please make sure to keep your line individually muted so that we avoid echoes on the line. And if you have a question, there is a question box on the right-hand side of your toolbar, and we'll be sure to answer those. And Teresa, I may not be able to see my screen, the control panel at the same time as the slides for some reason, so I may ask you if questions come in just to interrupt me for a second and see if we can get those answered. But we're going to go through sort of chunk by chunk, and then we'll ask questions as we go. I want to take 1 second just to acknowledge Caitlin Fisher, who's on the line. Caitlin is the Vice Chair of the EPIP Board and also the Chair of the Strategies and Initiatives Committee, which has been overseeing this process from our board. Caitlin, I may be catching you in the middle of something, but I'm going to unmute you for a second in case you have anything you'd like to say.
People hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just really glad to be part of the process in supporting EPIP, Tamir, in the strategic planning process. It's an exciting time for us to be thinking about our work and the broader context of what's happening in the world. So thank you to everybody who's contributing voices.
Thanks. Okay. So, can everybody see my slides? Christy, can you see them?
I can.
Great. So some of you have seen this slide before. One of the things that is really moving to me is as I go around the country, conferences, visiting many of you, I literally get stopped in the hallways and people are like, "You run EPIP? I was involved with EPIP 10 years ago, and now I'm doing X and Y, and I don't know what I would be doing in my career if it wasn't for EPIP. That's a heritage we take really seriously. For thousands of people, EPIP has been a place to connect with one another, to find their leadership footing, to chart a path forward for themselves, whether it's in philanthropy or elsewhere in social change work. And that's something we hold very close as we think about the future. And I'm trying to adjust the slides with the computer in front of me instead of the keyboard that actually guides that. Let me get that out of the way. A corollary to that, and an important one, is that there is incredible leadership power in our community. You're seeing some photos from a chapter leader strategy session we did at our conference. There are folks in the EPIP community who are not just sort of biding their time to be foundation presidents one day, but they're moving the needle in philanthropy right now, you know, really stepping out, taking risks, putting themselves on the line in order to move forward what we care about. At the same time, one of the things that I hear over and over again in the hallways, you know, at the meeting after the meeting, at conferences, and in more formal conversations with many of you, is that folks are facing a set of very common challenges around how they're able to show up and lead in their workplaces. Those can be things like feeling like you can bring your full self to work, being able to ask questions or raise tough topics without fear of reprisal, and other things that may be seen sort of in the dominant culture of philanthropy as quote unquote not leadership behavior. And I've had a couple of EPIP members tell me, you know, Tamir, EPIP is the only place where I feel like I can show up as myself. And that's obviously something we want to change. But the flip side of that is that because there are these, you know, sort of weird culture and practice barriers in philanthropy that affect our members, our institutional members and philanthropy overall is not getting the full benefit of the talent that we bring to the table. And that's a loss on both sides. At the same time, philanthropy has a long history of supporting social justice and equity movements dating back well before the Civil Rights Movement, but also including the Civil Rights Movement. And many of us are coming of age professionally or as advocates or activists in the age of Black Lives Matter, in the age of resistance to the Dakota Access Pipeline, and now in an administration that many would consider openly hostile to many of the communities that we serve. And I think everybody in philanthropy is asking ourselves, what leadership role, what is the role we should be playing in this, what feels like in many ways a new world, and how do we stand up for what we believe in without losing sight of what makes philanthropy powerful? One thing I want to note about that is that these questions that we're asking ourselves, we're asking them in different rooms, and it's really quite weird. So the Center for Effective Philanthropy did a study that they released in December, and the study looked at foundation CEOs and the biggest problems they see, the most pressing challenges in society, and the things they'd like to do better and what they think the barriers are. And they said the most pressing challenges were economic inequality, climate change, and education. The biggest thing they wanted to do better was to listen to their grantees. And the biggest obstacle that they saw was their own staff and their own organizational culture. And I can tell you, because we did this at our conference, that if you ask our members, they'd say pretty much the same thing. And so, you know, something gives here, and we have an opportunity to really engage each other in dialogue to move the sector forward, to be in fuller alignment with our sort of hopes and dreams for the world. So given that our heritage is one where we focus primarily on supporting individual leadership, but the sort of moment that we're in and the things that we keep hearing, we want to, while continuing to hold our strength and the work that we do around development, that we're also sort of exerting ourselves as a community in order to exert greater influence on our institutions, on the field, and on the world. And that's something that we do not just by ourselves, but in concert with the different stakeholders who make up EPIP, our institutional members, our funders, our partners, our allies, and champions for emerging leaders in the field. So with that, I want to turn it over to Christi. And Christi, I think you can unmute yourself just to talk a little bit about what the process has looked like so far, and then we can get into more about the strategy.
Tamir, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or morning, depending on where you are in the country right now. As Tamir mentioned, this is a super exciting moment for us right now in EPIP because we're about to, in just a couple minutes, share with you different parts of our draft strategy that we've been putting together. And a lot of this work has happened prior to this call, right? We've gone out and interviewed many different stakeholders within the EPIP community, chapter leaders, allies, institutional members, board members, current staff, past staff. We've also done a design workshop with chapter leaders at the annual conference back in September in Baltimore. At that conference, some of y'all, if you did participate, you might have noticed we also had a gallery walk, and here's a screenshot on the slide of the gallery walk where we invited people to share their input and then vote on different ideas that came out. And from all that, today we're presenting different parts of a strategic direction for EPIP, and it is a draft. Our goal really today is to get a temperature check on where these things sit with you as a community, right? We really want to get your feedback, hear your thoughts, your reactions, and really take that back and interpret and figure out where to go next with these different pieces. And so we're calling this whole part of the strategic planning process the open share process. And this is sort of the kickoff for it, right? We're engaging this whole community in feedback on different pieces. We'll talk through some of the activities, some of the outcomes, kind of our sketches of a theory of change. We might get into vision, mission, and values as well later today. And then afterwards, you'll also have an opportunity to review these slides and add comments to them directly. But today, I think the reason why we're doing this, Tamir mentioned earlier, is that EPIP is really trying to model something in terms of being radically transparent. It's a process that we're throwing out draft pieces so that everyone can be part of leading this strategic direction together. And that's why we're bringing it to you early before the board actually approves anything, just to sort of hear where people are at, understand whether this is something you would be excited and engaged with, hear your feedback and comments, and really you as an EPIP community, and you know, I'm also I think it went away. So I think Tamir mentioned earlier, I was very involved with EPIP in the past, so even as a member of this EPIP community, that this community, everyone on this line and other people in our EPIP community, that we together help to shape where the strategic direction will be. And so we're super excited. And I'm going to turn it over to Tamir. What he's going to do is he's going to present different parts of what we've drafted after having conversations with you all. And then we're going to go back and give you a chance to really share some of your thoughts, either on the call live, like Tamir said, we might administer some polls. We also invite you to just share some thoughts in the chat box as well if you wanted to, if that's more comfortable for you. There's also a question box, so there's multiple places in this webinar that you can share your feedback through. And one thing I wanted to try real quick before I turn it over to Tamir is I'm going to do a quick poll just to see where how everyone is currently engaged with EPIP. So I'm launching it now. Do y'all see this? Tamir, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so feel free to please respond. We want to know who you are on the line. Great. Looks like most folks are individual members. A lot of others. It's interesting. Some chapter leaders as well. Great. Thank you, super helpful. So now that you've gotten to play with the poll a little bit, you can actually see the results. And we'll do some of these as we review different parts of the draft strategy. Very cool. Okay, so Tamir, turning it over to you.
Great, thank you. Oh, we're getting some echo. That might be. There's that better? Got it. Okay. So we see ourselves becoming a community that continues to get even better at the thing that makes up our core advantage, professional and leadership development, but that brings a greater level of intentionality to what the different elements of that are. and the different tools that we can use to get there. Christi, I see you laughing. Can you not hear me? You can. Okay. I must have said something fun. So part of it is just continuing to build out what we're known for now, as one of our board members would say, sort of our McDonald's French fry. Another piece is engaging our members in the field more broadly to advocate and to innovate for things that support the success and advancement of our members and that advance our vision for what philanthropic leadership should look like in this age. And through all of that, we are not doing it in isolation. Many of you on the line, for example, I see Andrea from Geo is here and others, really have fabulous work that we can connect to, build from, plug into, whether it's around philanthropic excellence or around equity and social justice or around working with different populations. So we're not going to just sort of try to grow into this giant think tank kind of thing. It's really about working in a networked way, building partnerships that either bring opportunities back to our community and back to our members, or that either amplify our influence or the influence of others. And the key, and you'll see as we go through this, that if you sort of paste some of these slides together, they look like a theory of change. That's because that's what it is when you put it all together. And so on the left, most evaluators would call this inputs. We like to think of it more as drivers. The key driver, more than anything, is the talent and passion and insight of our community. Many of you on the line are chapter leaders. A lot of the things that we're starting to look at now are things that you've already just gone out and done, whether it's EPIP Minnesota, convening calls after the killings of Alton Sterling and Florino Castile, our Bay Area chapter hosting a debate with some pretty heavy hitters around whether philanthropy undermines civil society. There's a lot that's already going on that where you want to sort of be able to pull in and then find ways to support so that more of that can happen. It's easier for the folks who are already leading. Like another key ingredient is just champions among our member and allied organizations. When we rolled out a survey, and we're going to talk about this more later, which is meant to sort of substantiate some of the things that we've heard in the hallways, so to speak. And somebody who previewed it sent me an email and said, you know, Tamir, I love that you're asking these questions, but I don't understand why. Because ultimately, like, who's going to listen? And I said to them, you know, you'd be surprised that there are folks who run HR operations or are otherwise relatively highly positioned in pretty big organizations that are really interested in learning more about what we're thinking and feeling and connecting to the next generations of leaders. So there are folks who we can better engage, and they're a key driver of this too, because it's hard to move much without their support. And then, of course, there's always just making sure that we have the resources and infrastructure, not only that we can do the work, but that being involved in this community of leadership is fulfilling and delightful and really nourishing. And that's one of the things that EPIP's always been known for. Getting a little bit more into specifics here, I'll walk through a couple of things. So some of you may have been around EPIP long enough to remember something called Measuring the Leader, and it was a way of bringing some coherence to our training and development offerings. Pardon the beeping in the background. I'm based in Manhattan. And this builds on that, but tries to parse out a little bit more what the core things are that people have told us that they either want to get better at or feel like a lack of skill is really holding them back. So for example, there's a piece that's around hard skills development, whether that's data visualization or managing up or whatever. Knowledge of social justice and equity issues. Being able to exert influence internally, but also to be engaged as a change agent outside of your job, especially now that's something that folks have been saying a lot, they're trying to figure out how to do. And so we want to be a resource both now and in the future. How to cultivate one's personal leadership stance. So not just to sort of read the lip, but really figure out what kind of leader you want to be and how do you sort of root yourself in your values and your vision, so that whether you're a CEO or you know, the best consultant you can be, you really feel confident in the way that you're going about things. And that's a lifelong effort that we want to support. Of course, career advancement. A lot of people come to us because they're looking for ways to either get into philanthropy or advance their careers, so we're certainly not letting that go anytime soon. And then just learning the field and sort of rebooting our one-on-one stuff. And we'll get a chance to ask you guys, I think, on this webinar, and if not, we're definitely going to follow up on it. We want to make sure that those categories fit the things that you all would want to learn being a part of EPIP. If you have thoughts on that, you can pop them into the chat box right now. Don't feel like you have to stand on ceremony. In terms of advocacy and innovation, this is a little bit more the how, and you can see it on the screen. So basically, it's we want to make space for folks to self-organize and to support their organizing. We want to facilitate dialogue, and this is something that EPIP has done on and off for a really long time between senior leaders and folks who are sort of up and coming in the field. There may be campaigns that we want to do because we believe in something so strongly as a community that we want to lend our voice to it. And we want to work together to build solutions where perhaps none exist, or to promote practices that work. I can give you a couple of examples of what the what might be. So it may be anything from supporting practices internally where folks who are more junior can participate in strategy setting and organizational learning. So for example, the place where I used to work, we had a working group that had folks from all different teams and all different levels, and it was like training and organizational development. And so it was meant both to support people's professional development, but also to be a place to raise issues that were coming up in the organization and to work on them together. And so, supporting practices like that, you could imagine, just to give you an example, that if that comes back as a key issue that people want to focus on, we could, get folks together to talk about more about the issues, and then what practices work, and how do we partner with folks, whether it's Geo or others in the field who are really expert in these things, to sort of tie those threads together and support folks trying these things out. And then how do we support our members in going back and saying, this is something that is really coming up across the field. What can we do about this in our organization? So if you have thoughts on that, please, again, pop them in the chat. And again, through all of this, there are different structures that we want to use in order to bring things back to us and to plug into things that exist. And you can see it all there on the slide. But again, the key is we're not in the empire building business. I don't really care personally how much our brand is on stuff. It's much more about how we work with the folks who are leading and who are, especially the folks who are close to communities, in order to bring content and ideas back, to support their leadership, and then to lend our members' voices where appropriate to what's going on, etc. In terms of outcomes, and again, this is very much a work in progress, and we are the language is very much a work in progress. So if things come up that you have a strong positive or a strong negative reaction, please let us know. So the first is, and I would say focus on the stuff from about the middle of the screen to the right. We already talked about the strategies. So the first is just that our members are better able to perform with excellence and lead for equity. And that translates into advancement in their careers. The second is that organizations get better at getting the most out of their own talent. And that in doing so, they're able to take greater leadership for equity and foster a more excellent practice. And that can go back to some of the things that we talked about in terms of specifics like sort of cross-functional working groups, support for young parents, more strategic questions about generational differences in approach or workplace culture. And those are things that we're going to delve more into as this process progresses. So if you're feeling hungry for specifics, we may be able to spend more time on that during this conversation. As a result of those things, and I should note that these aren't as linear as we're making them look, but that's always the sort of the tyranny of boxes in a logic model. We want the things that we're talking about for organizations and leaders to become the standard for the field, so that the philanthropy feels more empowered to take more risks, to lead more boldly, and to bring more resources on better terms to the folks who are most affected by the issues that we see today in our society, so that our organizations are stronger, our movements are stronger, and we're able to achieve meaningful systemic change that creates a more just, equitable, and sustainable society. I think that was where we wanted to pause and start asking some questions, Christy, right?
Yeah, actually, it'd be great if folks have thoughts or reactions to any of the last three slides, starting from core strategies to activities to outcomes. Feel free to raise your hand, and we can unmute you so you can share it. You can also type things into the chat box or raise a question. You have three options there. So, Tamir, maybe if you can go back to the first slide that you were sharing, the three core strategies.
Sure, sorry about that. I seem to have, there we go. Core strategies.
Yeah, so 2 slides ago. There
This
you
one?
go. Mm-hmm. So I just want to open it up if folks have overall thoughts or reactions to these three core strategies. You see the drivers on the left. Sometimes people call these inputs. And then as Tamir went through, the emphasis for EPIP from professional leadership development, advocacy and innovation, and this community building work that supports and uplifts the professional leadership development and the advocacy and innovation. Just want to see if folks have open thoughts or comments or input. Does this resonate? Yes or no, and if so, what does or what doesn't? And I'm looking at the questions right now. I'm going to see if people have their hands raised. Nope. Let's see if there's anybody.
So Christi, we do have a question from Ariane Schaffer in the questions box. Do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, I don't see it for some reason. So yes, please do read it. It didn't show up in mine.
So this is not a plant, just want to say. It starts, EPIP, you are wonderful, exclamation point. I'm really interested in hearing how you see EPIP members taking more risks in their work. That's a great question. I mean, I'd actually love just to kick that out to the group. More folks are chewing on it. I mean, EPIP members take risks every day. I mean, I've talked to so many folks. In fact, Teresa has been thinking about doing this thing called Ugly Stories, which is about folks who try to take risks in the work and get smacked down, just so that we can sort of air some of that stuff. And so I just want to call out that folks are asking hard questions every day, and the challenge is that either they feel like they're not being heard, or they lack the skill to raise it in a way that will work given the culture of philanthropy. It's quite a challenge. And in fact, part of the reason that we're continuing to hold a focus on excellence in everything that we do is that if you don't have the standing, right, if you're not seen as, in some cases, perhaps twice as good and twice as hardworking in your work, that folks feel like they won't be heard. But I think part of what we're doing is maybe not pushing people to take more risks necessarily, but giving them cover to take risks if that's what's needed in order to do the work. And so, for example, the survey gives folks cover, and we don't know what the data is going to bring back. But if we get a lot of folks who say, you know, I really don't feel like I can show up at work, or as I am, right, or like in sort of assimilating into the workplace culture, I lose something important for the work. Us playing that back gives people cover to then go back and advocate for themselves, and it gives us another point of engagement, so that if we're saying it to a director of HR and they're hearing it and they want to do something about it, it takes some of the onus off of them to do the advocacy. And usually what happens is one person is brave enough to do it, and they just keep doing it until either they win or they get tired, and often those folks will leave.
Let me ask, thank you for that comment and that question. I want to see which of these strategies, if you know, seeing all three of them and seeing what they mean, feel most important for EPIP, for this community of practitioners. And feel free to jump on or throw out a question. Sometimes I don't see the question, so Tamir, you can let me know.
Mm-hmm. I'll keep watching that.
Yeah, or raise your hand too, because we can unmute the line for you if you want to jump in and share any input or feedback. So which of these, if any, feel most important?
I will call on people if nobody answers. Don't be shy.
How about we can also do a poll, and we can use that to get people's reactions. I'm seeing if anyone is jumping on. I don't see anyone raising their hands. I'm checking the questions and everything. Okay, here's one. I'm new to EPIP, not even an actual member yet, but I feel like community building is most important because there are so many community organizations that need funders to advocate, and assume advocate for them. Great, very helpful.
Thank you. And by the way, if folks want their question, we haven't been reading everybody's name out, but if you do want your question to be anonymous, put a couple of stars in the comment before you type it. If you type it in the chat to everyone will see it, and they'll see that it comes from you. But if you put it in the question, questions, then we can moderate them.
Great. Okay, how about, what do you think, Tamir? Maybe a quick poll?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'm going to do another poll, so please get ready, and it's on these core strategies, so take a look. Remember, there's 3 of them, and there's some drivers here that we believe lead into these 3 strategies. So we just want to get a gut check now, and I've just launched it, so feel free to let us know, how much do these core strategies actually resonate with you? As someone who has been engaged with EPIP, or maybe you're new to EPIP, but as members of our community. So please go ahead and answer.
These polls are anonymous, by the way.
Oh, that's it. Yeah, thanks, Tamir. We can't tell. We can tell how many of you have voted, but we can't tell who voted what.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to close it. I'm going to have 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. So 90% of the people on this call have voted. And I think I can actually share quickly the results. So it looks like on the higher end. Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Let's go ahead and continue to dig into maybe the next slide.
Let me pull it up.
And at any point, like I said, please feel free to, you can even send a private chat to me or Tamir. You can raise questions in the question box. Oh, I see a new question.
Yeah, I can take that, Christy.
Why don't you take that? Yeah.
Yeah. And Joseph, thank you for the question. It says, I'm brand new to EPIP. What types of professional development does our network offer? Would love to meet others in this community. So the first thing, Joseph, I don't know where you're based, but if you're in one of the 14 markets where EPIP currently has a chapter, definitely get engaged with the chapter. That's where a lot of the action happens with EPIP. It's where a lot of us build our deepest relationships. I'm a former chapter leader in New York myself. And our chapters, all the things that we're talking about, our chapters in some form already do. So that's a great place to connect with your peers. At the national level, we do a number of things, mostly of the programmatic variety. So one is that we do a webinar series. This is part of that series. Usually every other week, we call them Wednesday webinars, almost always at the same day and time, Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Next week, we're going to be doing a cross-partner briefing with Change Philanthropy around community responses since the inauguration. And I strongly encourage everyone on this call to join us for that. We also have our national conference. This year, we're going to be doing a Unity Summit with our coalition partners at Change Philanthropy, who are folks who sort of build bridges between different communities like Black communities, LGBTQ communities, and philanthropy in New Orleans, September 19 through 21. Please join us there. It's going to be awesome. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff on our website. I just strongly encourage you to check it out. And we're happy to connect with you to tell you more about what we're up to. And I know that there are a couple of folks who haven't even joined EPIP yet, and we'd love to talk to you about getting you more formally into the community.
Great. Thanks, Tamir. So now that we're looking at the activities slides, you'll see these activities fall under the 3 core strategies on the previous slide. I want to ask the group, do these activities feel like the right ones? If so, which ones feel most important? Or if they don't feel like the right ones, which ones don't feel right? And maybe help us understand why. So feel free to raise questions, throw in comments in the chat box. You can also raise your hand and I can unmute you and you can share your thoughts with the group. We'd love to hear from you. So do these activities feel like the right ones? If so, which ones feel most important for the EPIP community in the next couple years, given the times that we are in today? Let's see, there's a question here from Andrea. I'd love to know how you are currently and are planning to incorporate an internal equity lens when developing and fleshing out these strategies, both nationally and at the chapter level.
That's very important to us. That's something that our team talks about all the time. We've already built it into the way. So just from an operations standpoint, we've already built it into the way that we hire. we it's actually so, like, we're a small team, so a lot of things happen informally. Not a lot of it is written down, but in everything we do, we're trying to think about how we're creating safe spaces for folks from all different walks of life. We're asking questions about whether the things that we're trying to promote, the different practices that we promote, support communities, or just sort of, how would I put this, sort of internalize things about the philanthropic status quo that frustrate all of us who care about equity and social justice. One of the things that folks have wanted to do, and some of our chapters have already gone ahead and done it, is to build relationships with folks who aren't just foundation folks, but also nonprofit folks. Many of our chapter leaders are nonprofit folks, and community activists. And that's something, one of the things that I'm really excited about in having Teresa on is that she comes from an organizing background. That's one of the things that we're hoping to think about together. So it's not totally formalized yet, Andrea, and I'd love to talk to you more. Maybe there are resources that you all have that can help us think about how we put it on paper a little bit more. But we think about it very much as at the core of our DNA.
Great. We have another comment from Andrea Garvey that mentions that she's really interested and excited in the advocacy and innovation activities. So just wanted to note that. And then a question from Ciara about how the Michigan chapter just had a strategic planning meeting. One concept was their role in being responsive to what's happening in the community and nationally, and want to know how that falls under the strategies and these activities, etc. And I think there's an ask here for other chapters to share what they're doing.
Yeah, and if folks from other chapters want to weigh in either question or chat, or raise their hands, we'll give you the mic. That's definitely something that we've been wrestling with. One slide that's not in here because it's still very much in draft, we haven't pushed it out even to beta yet, is what our leadership structure could look like. And part of our goal is to support distributed leadership across our full community, and our chapters are a central part of that. And so one of the things that we're doing, we're just starting to get it off the ground, is to put together a committee of our chapter leaders who are going to wrestle with those questions, and we're going to bring somebody on to help us add some capacity and drive follow through. The goal is for the chapters to decide that together, and then to figure out how they want to implement it individually. And I don't know if Tyler is on or other folks. Andrea, I think you're one of the chapter leaders for DC. You all just had your strategy session like a week ago, didn't you? I'll give folks a chance to respond. This is going to be a little bit helter-skelter. We've got stuff coming in.
Yeah. Thank you. And then there is one comment that I'll add, unless Tyler, I think, might have stepped away for a second.
I don't think he was registered.
Yeah. So feel free to respond to that. What other chapters are doing in the chat box. We did have some comments about professional development and others about developing tools for foundations to tackle systems of white supremacy, etc.
Oh, Tyler? Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Great. Okay. But keep the comments and questions coming in.
All right, Tyler, I'm unmuting you.
And we are reviewing them.
Tyler, you there?
Great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
A little bit.
What can I say that'll be helpful about DC, Tamir? What's on your mind?
Yeah, so you guys just announced your strategy for the year in your newsletter. Can you talk a little bit about this question about how you're responding to stuff that's happening nationally at a local level? It sounds like it's something that you may have wrestled with during your meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And being here in DC, we've especially been on the front line of that. Having both the new administration come into our city and have many issues still presiding and a lot of local work still going on. And so we're doing both. We hope to do a new kind of presidency-focused event in the next month or so, and are hoping to dive deeper with local activists and nonprofit organizations as they're doing the work on the ground, serving and organizing the community here in DC. And it's very much a tension that we're holding, both to respond at a higher level on topical issues that are interest of our members, and really putting that interest into action. And so we discussed a lot of that, and really, instead of necessarily thinking through the next few days, we kind of built some values around how we wanted to engage with local community and what that looks like. And as new issues are arising around immigration, the environment, and more, how we would be addressing those with our members and talking through that, and what the events look like and the programming and more. So happy to connect with folks offline if they want to learn more.
Great. Thanks, man.
Great. Thanks for the comments that are coming in. There are comments, Tyler, about trying to connect with other chapters, and so I think we'll think about facilitating that. And then there's also a comment about making sure that somewhere in these activities there's a reflection about responsiveness to the current events, as well as community needs sort of being elevated in the activities. So I'm going to do a quick poll on these activities. Tamir, did you have something before I did that?
Yeah, we got another comment, and maybe while I was searching the attendee list, you read this out, so forgive me if I had a one-track mind. But Lee had a comment saying that as much as the professional and leadership development work that we do can call on and tackle systems of white supremacy and help build tools for foundations to combat these structures, even internally, the better. And I would say, Lee, that's very much part of the goal. And we had originally had this drawn as overlapping circles because they're really not they're not as sort of distinct as they look, right? Experience is the best teacher, and we think that by being involved in some of these efforts, folks will learn a lot of these skills. We're just also going to have programming, and part of our goal, and Andrea, I think this is partly responsive to your question too, is in every program that we do, in every initiative that we build, we want to have something around, we want to both have questions that sort of help us filter what we do, whether it's like our curation or whatever, but also how are we bringing in questions around equity, around who benefits, around who's leading who, and those kinds of questions, so that we're always a space where those can be raised, and it just becomes part of how we work, and over time, part of how philanthropy works.
Great. So I'm going to continue to move us along. Feel free to keep the comments and questions coming in, even if we don't have time necessarily to address all of them on the call today. We are taking note of them and can follow up, or we'll take that comment or input in consideration as we continue to revise these draft sections of the strategy. So I'm going to do a quick poll just to sort of see where people are at with the activities that fall under these strategies. So let me launch it. Curious, to what extent do these activities reflect what you'd want EPIP to do? And keep in mind that the strategy that we're working on, we're thinking in the next 3 to 5 years, with a sort of emphasis on the next couple years. So feel free to jump in and answer. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
This is really interesting watching it in real time.
Yeah.
It looks like there may be some things that we're missing, and I'd love to hear, while folks are still voting, I'd love to hear more about.
Yeah. I think we saw that piece around community, responding to the times and sort of elevating community. We'll take a look at that. But great. So I'm going to close this in about 3 seconds. Great. Thank you, everyone. And I think I can hit this and share the results really quickly. So it sounds like for the most part, these activities do resonate. There might be something missing for some of you, or maybe there's something that doesn't. So feel free to even privately chat us. If you don't want to necessarily put it in the question box, you can privately chat us and share your input. And as I mentioned before, these slides will be made available to you all after this webinar. So you can also feel free to comment directly on the slides after the webinar. So Tamir, maybe let's go into the outcome slide and just sort of get a check on what people are thinking about the outcomes as you've outlined them.
Just catching up on the comments. These are great comments.
Yeah. So quickly, these outcomes, Tamir outlined them earlier, but as you can see, the core strategies are on the left. You've sort of seen what activities could fall under those core strategies and how they build up to these outcomes. excellent active leaders, diverse, supportive, and engaged organizations, diverse, equitable, and inclusive sector, and this building up to a more just, equitable, and sustainable society. So thoughts, comments, reactions on these outcomes, do they feel like the right ones for EPIP over the next few years? And these will very much anchor how EPIP thinks about EPIP as a community, how you'd want to think about focusing your activities underneath your strategies to get to these outcomes. So thoughts, questions, reactions? Oh, here's one from Eric. We're wondering if, as an outcome for EPIP, if we want to call out the connecting and cohesion of EPIP members and advocates across the country, is building community and developing our network an end within itself? Yeah. Great question. Great feedback there.
It's a great question and one that we've wrestled with. And I think this is where we start, like, even just in conversations with the board, we've been sort of wrestling back and forth with how detailed the theory of change should be, and like where it becomes a logic model and sort of what level of detail can you manage to. I do think that at a minimum, I do think that EPIP members being connected to communities is definitely an outcome that is important to us and arguably a necessary condition because we want to see philanthropy be more connected to communities. So I think that's important. And there's probably some indicators that we can think about that help us understand whether we're getting there. So as we think about both the 10,000-foot version of this, Christi, and the more detailed one, we should think about that. And Eric, I also just want to acknowledge your other comment earlier in the thread saying that responsiveness to current events and community needs should be represented in the activities. And I think you're absolutely right. That's something that we want to get better at. We want to help our chapters feel supported in doing.
Great. Any other thoughts or comments? Please keep them coming. Like I said, even if we can't address all of them on the call because of time constraints today, we are taking note of them. Tamir, I'm looking at the time. I'm thinking let's do a poll on this and maybe do a quick few minutes for you to go through vision, mission, values?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. Please keep the questions coming on outcomes. Oh, here's one more real quick before we do a poll. I'm wondering how EPIP members, this is from Kimberly, being emerging, quote unquote, factors into these outcomes. Do EPIP members, quote unquote, graduate into a different relationship with their organization? What is the trajectory for individual members?
That's a great question. I'd say right now, it's a little bit muddied in the way that we're organized, but we have EPIP members who are really active, who are 22 and just graduated from school, and we have folks who are 45 and have 20 years of working experience but just got into philanthropy. And there are different stages of leadership that we want to be more systematically able to support. I sometimes think about it as sort of our second stage program. And this is part of why we want to get more systematic in the way that we do our programming. So I don't know that right now people sort of graduate when they say, well, I've been involved for a while, I'm kind of done, and then they self-identify as an alum. And that's also a relationship that some of our chapters have sought to tap. So for example, our Boston chapter, and Caitlin was instrumental in making this happen, and I think our Los Angeles chapter have mentorship programs where folks have a more formal sort of relationship. But I wouldn't want us to see all of our sort of intergenerational work be confined to seeking advice. And so that's a balance that we want to get better at, but we also want to do better at supporting folks given where they are in their own leadership development. So I think that's going to be a project for us just organizationally over the next few years.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to launch one more poll about these outcomes. So take a quick look at the outcomes. Excellent active leaders, diverse, supportive, and engaged organizations, and then a diverse and equitable sector. I'm going to launch this. How appropriate do these outcomes feel overall for our EPIP community? I'm going to leave this open for about 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds. So please jump in and let us know. How appropriate did those outcomes feel overall for EPIP?
And while folks are voting, I want to answer a question from Sierra. Is networking and relationship building still a priority for EPIP? This may be missing or it's embedded in another strategy. It's so important, I'd hate to lose that from our DNA. I think we see that as part of community building, and having folks, I mean, relationship building is one of the keys to being able to do anything in this field. For so many folks who come to EPIP, just being able to meet people who are going through some of the same things and have the same questions as they are makes all the difference in them finding a way forward. So it may not be reflected here in a way that's perfectly articulated, but it's definitely still a part of our DNA and very much. I'd say the other piece of this, Sierra, is that we've really been struggling a little bit with the difference between talking about strategy and then how we sort of market and like who's the us and who's the you. And so, like, if I were pitching you on joining EPIP, one of the first things I'd say is come find your own. But when we're talking about where we want to go as a community, it starts to get a little bit more abstract. So that's definitely something that we're trying to get better at. And at some point, we may come back to folks to sort of test some of that better. But we're trying to sort of balance those two things. But yes, it's very much a core part of where we're trying to go.
Tamir, do you want to very quickly go through vision, mission?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think Christy's trying to get me not to avoid this because these are still, again, these are sort of minimum viable products. We've workshopped them extensively with the board, and now we're sort of airing them out a little bit. So the purpose of looking at vision, mission, and values again is to authorize ourselves to doing some of the things we're trying to do. And by the way, I noticed that there was one or two. Christy, I want to make sure to acknowledge this. There were one or two people in the last poll who voted who felt like the outcomes that we were focused on did not feel, that felt less than appropriate perhaps. And whether that's because something's missing or they're not comfortable with the focus. I don't assume that you feel comfortable sharing that directly with everybody. You're certainly welcome to, and we'd appreciate it. But you're also welcome to email Christy, and Christy will not share your name with me. And it's her job to be more neutral than I am about this. So please do share that. That's the best feedback you can get is the stuff no one will say to your face. So I'm very much relying on honest and unvarnished feedback to help us make this something that is meaningful to you. In terms of these pieces, again, it's about sort of updating stuff so that we feel like it fully represents who we're trying to be and also that we're sort of authorized to do the things that we want to do. So the current mission is to develop emerging leaders committed to building a just, equitable, and sustainable society. And a couple of things came up as we were debating this as the board. One is that we felt that saying developing emerging leaders committed to felt a little bit weaker than we actually wanted to be. A lot of our members are already committed to it, and it's more about being able to do it and supporting people in doing it. I think the other piece that came up, interestingly enough, is that a core part of EPIP's DNA has always been a focus on professional excellence. just, equitable, and sustainable society. And the proposition that we're putting forward to our community to ratify or not is, if philanthropy's ultimate end is not to advance a just, equitable, and sustainable society, or perhaps substitute like a world that is nourishing to the human spirit and the dignity of all, whatever the right language is, doesn't matter how good it is. So that's what we've been debating, and I'd love your thoughts on that, because that has been something that has been, I think, a creative tension in the process so far.
And we have one from Andrea, too, to include, after cultivate and activate, to include cultivate, activate, and empower. So any thoughts or comments on that? Other thoughts and reactions? This is really helpful to hear from folks. Yeah. And since, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tamir.
That's one of the words we tested with the board, too. And we were sort of two minds about it, because for some folks saying, I'm going to empower you is actually patronizing, but for other people it's empowering. So I think maybe, Christi, if we ever get to the point that we're like testing specific words, I don't know if we're doing that today or if we should, but I think that's on, if that's not on the list, we should put it there. And we got a comment in support of empower, so maybe that is where we want to go. Okay, great. Yeah, this is helpful. Should we do a quick poll on this, Tamir? Before, yeah, all right. I'm going to do a quick poll. How excited are you by this mission, possibly with the inclusion of the word empower or not? So please jump in and weigh in on this. How excited are you by this new mission for EPIP? All right, I'll leave it open for about 15 more seconds. I also want to note, as people are voting, that I have added a link in the chat box to these slides where you can go in and look at them again if you want to spend more time with them, and you can actually comment on those slides. So if you didn't get to share what you were thinking today, we really want to hear your comments, so feel free to go through that link. Great. Great. We got a follow-up comment, Christi, that this was a huge upgrade to the current mission. Oh, fantastic. Good to know, and we are still open to more feedback and still open to continuing to revise it, so thanks. Okay, great. We have some excitement here, and for the person or two that isn't excited, please feel free to share your comment to us directly. You can also email me, and I dropped my email in the chat box as well if you feel more comfortable doing that. Yeah, and I'll just say, folks, like, there's a lot of room in how this is implemented for people to get the things that they need, right? So if some people come to EPIP and they want to gain skills to get a better job, and that's fine. And if that's what you want to get out of EPIP, we'll still be there for that. But it also means that we're going to be creating room for a lot of other things, and we're going to challenge people's notions about what that means. You know, I think that, especially in the leadership infrastructure we want to build, whether it's chapters or other opportunities, there will be room for folks to sort of pursue the things that they're most interested in. Great. So, Tamir, we have one more minute. I'm wondering if you want to share, there are a couple more slides we didn't get an opportunity to go through. That, like I said, I just dropped the link into the chat box. All of you are more than welcome to view the rest of the slides, as well as the slides we went through, and share your comments with us directly. Tamir, I'm wondering, I added my contact info and your contact info to this slide as well. Should we do one last poll just to gauge people's reactions to the overall strategic direction we've presented today? One last one. That's a good idea. Let's okay. We can talk about what's next. So I definitely want to make a plug for some of these things. Okay. Here's our last poll today. Everything you've seen today, activities, core strategies, outcomes, you've seen a revised mission. How compelling is the overall strategic direction? Please feel free to jump in and vote. And then we're going to leave the slide on the screen that has the link to these slides, a link to our Philanthropic Sector Experience Survey, which we encourage you to fill out and share with your peers. It takes about 15 minutes. This is where we're getting information about your experiences that help inform this strategy. And then also it has my contact and Tamir's contact information to share any other comments or feedback. Yes. And by the way, just so you guys know, when you log off of this webinar, you're going to get asked to fill out a follow-up survey. The survey, I don't think we've customized it on the other end. It's the same survey you get after all of our webinars. We may try to send you a 3-question survey just to get a better sense of your experience using this platform. This is the kind of thing we want to get better at, and would just love to know more about your experience participating in the town hall.
Yeah. So please record your rating, because I'm going to close the poll right now. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, that's exciting. Thank you, everyone. And for those who feel like it's only moderately compelling, we do want to hear from you. My email is in the chat box. Tamir's email is tamir@epip.org. You can access the slides directly through this link. And like I said, we do have a new EPIP member survey out there. It's called the Philanthropic Sector Experience Survey. It allows you to share your experiences and stories with us to inform how we continue to revise the parts of the strategy. So we'll leave this screen up. Thanks for your feedback, comments. Tamir, anything else?
Yeah, and we'll send these links out in an email afterwards too, because it may be a pain to try to copy a bit.ly link off of your computer if you're even on it. So we'll send those out as follow-up. But I really just want to thank you guys. You know, the only way this is going to work is if you all are driving it, and so it's just really exciting to be able to have such a rich and substantive conversation with you all. And many of you, I think I'll be seeing in other forums as well. And so just thank you, and looking forward to doing further. And stay tuned. Our ambition is to post a draft of the whole plan on a format where people can tear it up and put it back together if they want to, or something to that effect. So stay tuned. We're going to keep doing this out in the open, and thank you for making this such a productive conversation.
Thank you. We're super grateful. I think we'll leave this up for a couple minutes for folks to write it down. It's also easy to copy and paste it in your chat box. There's hyperlinks down there. So just check the chat box. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Teresa, I think we're good to close. All right, I'm going to close this out.